Hi, this is Matthew again. Today I want to talk to you about the Ashkenazi Jews and some of the misconceptions about them. Ashkenazi Jews, also called Ashkenazi Jews or Ashkenazim, comprise a subculture of European Judaism. In ancient times, as the Jewish people spread out from the land of Israel, many settled in Europe. Ashkenazi Jews are descended from the Jews of the Middle Ages who settled in Germany, Poland, Austria, and Eastern Europe. Ashkenaz is a traditional Hebrew word for Germany as you see in Genesis 10:3 and Jeremiah 51:27. They settled in an area along the Rhine River. The Ashkenazi Jews are often referred to in distinction to Sephardic Jews, who inhabited medieval Spain and Portugal. In the 20th century, the Holocaust in Germany took a heavy toll on the Ashkenazi population. Many Ashkenazi Jews emigrated to other countries such as France, the United States, and Israel. When the nation of Israel was established in 1948, Ashkenazi Jews were the largest group of Jews to settle there. Nearly half of the Jews living in Israel today are Ashkenazic, and it's estimated that 80% of Jews worldwide are Ashkenazic. The Ashkenazi Jews developed the Yiddish language, a mix of German and Hebrew, and some unique customs that set them apart from other Jewish subcultures. The Ashkenazim have long had an impact on the world by making major contributions to science. For example, Albert Einstein was Ashkenazic, and others were contributors to literature, economics, and the arts. Some people promote a theory that Ashkenazi Jews are not Jews at all, rather, they are descendants of the Khazars, a nomadic collection of people in the Turkish Empire. This politically motivated theory attempts to suggest that the Jews now in Israel have no historical claim to the land. There are also many conspiracy theories that link the Ashkenazi Jews with the Illuminati and a one-world government. What all these theories have in common is a lack of documentation or other credible evidence. The Ashkenazim are not Asiatic Gentiles, and they are not behind the New World Order, at least as a group. Websites that make such assertions are filled with odd historical claims, speculation, and myths in the guise of science. This misconception is gaining steam, especially due to the conflict after the October 7th incident in Israel. This conspiracy theory that the Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Khazars who converted in the Middle Ages is a myth, according to new research by a Hebrew university historian. The Khazar thesis gained global prominence when Professor Shlomo Sand of Tel Aviv University published The Invention of the Jewish People in 2008. In that book, which became a bestseller and was translated into several languages, Sand argued that the Jewish people is an invention, forged out of myths and fictitious history to justify Jewish ownership of the land of Israel. This idea was initially put forth by another author, Arthur Kessler, in a 1976 book titled, The 13th Tribe, the Khazar Empire and Its Heritage. Now, another Israeli historian has challenged one of the foundations of Sand's argument, his claim that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from the people of the Khazar kingdom, who in the 8th century converted in mass on the instruction of their king. In an article published this month in the journal Jewish Social Studies, Professor Shaul Stampfer concluded that there is no evidence to support this assertion. Such a conversion, even though it's a wonderful story, never happened, Stampfer said. Stampfer, an expert in Jewish history, analyzed material from various fields but found no reliable source for the claim that the Khazars, a multi-ethnic kingdom that included Iranians, Turks, Slavs, and Circassians, converted to Judaism. There never was a conversion by the Khazar king or the Khazar elite, he said. The conversion of the Khazars is a myth with no factual basis. As a historian, he said he was surprised to discover how hard it is to prove that something didn't happen. Until now, most of my research has been aimed at discovering or clarifying what happened in the past. It's a much more difficult challenge to prove that something didn't happen than to prove it did. That's because the proof is based primarily on the absence of evidence rather than its presence, like the fact that an event as unprecedented as an entire kingdom's conversion to Judaism merited no mention in contemporaneous sources. The silence of so many sources about the Khazars' Judaism is very suspicious, Stampfer said. The Byzantines, the Geonim, Jewish religious leaders of the 6th to 11th centuries, the sages of Egypt, none of them have a word about the Jewish Khazars. The Geonim is the formal title of the heads of the academies of Sura and Pumbedita in Babylonia. The research ended up taking him 4 years. I thought I'd finish in 2 months, but I discovered that there was a huge amount of work. I had to check sources that aren't in my field, and I consulted and got help from many people. Stampfer said his research had no political motives, though he recognizes that the topic is politically fraught. It's a really interesting historical question, but it has political implications, he said. As a historian, I'm naturally worried by the misuse of history. I think history should be removed from political discussions, but anyone who nevertheless wants to use history must at least present the correct facts. In this case, The facts are that the Khazars didn't convert, the Jews aren't descendants of the Khazars, and the contemporary political problems between Israelis and Palestinians must be dealt with based on current reality, not based on a fictitious past. Sand had tied the Khazar issue directly to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, telling everyone in 2008 that many Jews feared that wide acceptance of his thesis would undermine their historic right to the land. The revelation that the Jews are not from Judea, ancient Israel, would ostensibly knock the legitimacy of our being here out from under us. There is a very deep fear that doubt will be cast on our right to exist. Stomper believes the persistence of the Khazar conversion myth attests to researchers' reluctance to abandon familiar paradigms. Those who believe this story, and they are many, usually didn't do so for malicious reasons, he says. I tell my students that the only thing I want them to remember from my classes is the need to investigate and ask, to investigate whether the arguments they hear are credible, reasonable, and are well-founded. Certainly, what we do have is the Bible. The Bible does talk about the dispersion that happened to the Jews during the Babylonian period. Jews were dispersed all over the world. There could have been Jews dispersed to the area occupied by Turkey, but Jews were dispersed all over the world. I even met a large Jewish in Brazil when my wife and I were there for our son's wedding. To say that 75% of the Jews came from this one area would be difficult to believe even without evidence to the contrary. The people that support this hypothesis support it for one reason, that is to argue against the Jews having a right to the land. The argument that the Jews don't have a right certainly is totally against what the Bible says. The Bible presents historical evidence that the area that Israel occupies today was given to them by God and that they occupied this land back to Abraham. The Jews are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Jews can argue that the land given to them is much larger than the area occupied by them today. The argument made by the Palestinians and their supporters does not provide any evidence for this theory. Regardless of what countries the Ashkenazi Jews have lived in through the centuries, the Bible teaches that an Israelite is a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Bible also declares the Jews to be God's chosen people. Moses said to the children of Israel in Deuteronomy 7 verses 6-8, "You are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession. The Lord did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your ancestors that he brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the land of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh king of Egypt." We are producing another video that will discuss the lost tribes of Israel, who they are and whether there is some truth to this statement. You can watch this video on our website at nehemiahreset.org or on our Rumble.com channel. If you have suggestions for other videos that you would like us to produce, send us an email at info@nehemiahreset.org. We hope to see you again shortly on another one of our videos. Continue praying for the situation in Israel that this conflict will come to a swift conclusion. Shalom.